My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Global Director of Technology at Modine Manufacturing. Very happy to be with you today. Happy to take any questions as we go through the content. As this slide says, this is part of a general corporate overview. You'll find very similar content with the exception of about 3 slides that I put into explain my role at Modine, and then 2 other ones just to level set us on some heat exchanger and heat transfer basics. But all the polished corporate slides, you can find these at modine.com under our investor section. So with that, I'll show anybody that's been on an earnings call for a publicly traded company like Modine. You see these statements, forward-looking statements. I know this isn't a big deal here. There is a little bit of financial information in there, so there is this qualifier around anything that I might say in terms of direction that Modine's going. Take all this with a grain of salt, and I certainly encourage you to go spend more time again on modine.com, especially under the investor content. If you're interested, or I need to clean up any of my mess, I'm going to point you back there, and there's some great recordings from our CEO and CFO that really explain things more from the earnings call standpoint. But I wanted to be able to use content here that was publicly available about our products. Now, this is one of my slides to introduce myself. And I like to have a little bit of fun with my title, Global Director of Technology, and working for a heat transfer company. My friends hear this title and they think I'm doing highly technical things with printed circuit boards, and yeah, that crosses into a little bit what we do, but usually I'm sourcing that. My customers, they hear Director of Technology and Engineering, they think I'm playing with Legos and building toys and things like that throughout the day. Society, when I get cold calls through LinkedIn, they want to sell me SAP, ERP type solutions, and I say, no, I don't do that. I'm in product development, intellectual property, virtual technology, and they say, oh, great, we can help you with that too. Yeah, my parents, they come to me and they think, I can help them out with, their cable, computer, cell phones. Thankfully, I have a 13-year-old son that can do all that, so I just send him over. And then, of course, I think I'm like Tony Stark, like Iron Man, inventing really cool stuff, saving the world. But what I really do are pull together presentations like this. And within Modine, I have intellectual property oversight. I support some of our M&A activity. I oversee a technical committee. As we get deeper into the presentation, you'll see Modine is segmented into smaller business units, and we have technical leaders in each of those business units. And there are certain things, especially megatrends and certain technologies that span across our business, but we really have found it's important that each area focuses on their customers, on their end markets. So I'm the thin layer over the top that keeps those technical leaders in touch. VTG is our virtual technology group. So we do a lot of virtual analysis like finite element analysis, CFD, custom software to size and select our different heat exchangers and heat transfer equipment. I oversee that group. I've become more involved in the E portion of ESG, environmental, social governance. Our purpose that you'll see shortly here from Modine is engineering a cleaner, healthier world. So we think of our plants and our products and this strong connection back to doing the right things for the environment. And then, of course, there's all kinds of different special technical projects that come up amongst the executive team that I help support. So that's really what I do, and most of the time to do that is I'm trying to facilitate and support through communication, through connecting people, and that usually means building presentations or giving presentations like this one. So that's my role at Modine. I've been here with Modine for almost 20 years. Before that, I came out of a small family business. So I joined Modine right out of college, but I grew up in a family business that worked on metal finishing. My father was a tool and die maker for Chrysler in Kenosha, formerly American Motors, if you want to go way back, and then it became Chrysler. and he started his own metal finishing shop. So, you know, it was interesting to go from a small business where I watched my dad, who was the owner, do everything from clean the bathrooms to quote jobs to, you know, do OD, ID grinding and work with customers. And when I came to Modine, much bigger company, but still some of that small company feel in Modine, and that's why I've been able to stay here and be successful for about 20 years. This I'm really proud of. You know, Modine has always been a company that's embraced ethics and doing things the right way. We recently had a CEO leadership change, and we've fine-tuned our purpose, which is engineering a cleaner, healthier world, and we've connected that to missions that fit into the different business units that I'll talk about a little bit later. But you know, these 5 missions: improve indoor air quality, reduce water and energy consumption, lower harmful emissions, enable cleaner running vehicles, and the use of environmentally friendly refrigerants. These don't fit into every one of our businesses. Some align really well with 1 or 2. But again, this is where we've found the benefit of segmentation and focus. We've got thermal innovation at the heart of all these different business units. But really, you'll see as we looked at our organization, which was once functional, but is now more vertical or business unit specific, we see the opportunities in these markets and how to solve problems related to different parts of this mission much more clearly. And of course, we focus a lot on our values. Previously, we talked about our behaviors, but we fine-tuned this as well to talk about our values. I like to say behavior is something that we can alter or, you know, maybe fake temporarily, but value is really at the core of somebody and how they live their life. And I like this idea of focusing on values and being integrity committed, people-centric, technology-driven, results-oriented, and team-focused. So really excited to see a company like Modine that's been here for more than 100 years, get a fresh leadership team to really unlock some value and focus on specific missions, focus on these specific values, and we're really doing some exciting things that I'm going to tell you more about in the coming slides. Talked a little bit about unlocking this value, and you know, a company, if you've heard of Modine, it's probably through more of a automotive lens. Our founder, A.B. Modine, started the company, was awarded over 100 patents, a lot of them in the automotive space, but also many in the non-automotive space. His first invention focused on a radiator for a vehicular application, and then he quickly took that radiator and he put it into a unit heater in his shop in Racine, Wisconsin, so that his workshop could be heated during our cold winters. So from the beginning, we've had these elements of automotive and non-automotive technology. But the new leadership team has brought the 80-20 principle to us, and this has really helped with that focus and that segmentation. And it's the Pareto principle where 80% of the value is coming from 20% of the products or 20% of the customers. It's very data-driven, and it's something that's been extremely helpful and valuable to us, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. Of course, the ESG component that I mentioned, we're partnering with our customers and our supply chain so that we can all achieve our sustainability goals. And you'll hear me talk about this. We'll certainly focus on heat exchangers, but we're seeing the value and the benefits of going beyond heat exchangers and focusing on subsystems and systems that still use the heat exchangers, but it's a better value proposition to move up the technology staircase and look beyond component technology. And that fits into strategic growth, where we're looking certainly at top line growth, but also margin expansion. Again, by providing more value add solutions, the market tends to reward that with higher margins. So high level, Modine at a glance, according to our fiscal 23 sales, in our fiscal year goes from April 1st to March 31st. So fiscal 23, 2.3 billion in sales, adjusted EBITDA a little over 212 million, free cash flow just under 57 million. Probably more interesting, important is that we're a global company, 36 manufacturing sites in more than 14 countries with over 11,000 employees. The headquarters is in Racine, Wisconsin. We do have R&D technical centers in multiple regions, though. Racine is a big one, but also in Leeds in the United Kingdom, Boulogne, Germany, Grenada, Mississippi, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Chennai, India, Guadalajara, Spain. They're not all the same, not even really that close. They've been developed to support sales in that region, and there's different technologies that are better suited, like our Leeds, United Kingdom. This is our Airedale business that's very focused in data center. So they have the ability to do performance testing and development of data center equipment. In Racine, we have a world-class vehicular wind tunnel. Anything from a Harley-Davidson motorcycle to Caterpillar small wheel loader, we can pull in there, buses, fire trucks. So each of the tech centers is a little bit different, primarily based on what we're providing and what we need to support in that region. One of my slides again, you just have to survive this one and the next one, and then we'll get back into the more polished content. But just wanted to level set everyone in terms of talking about heat exchangers. We hear about the laws of thermodynamics and the first law, second law. That first law is really saying that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So when we think of a heat exchanger, we have two fluid paths. We're exchanging heat from one fluid path to another. The second law gets a little goofier if you read it verbatim, but basically says that when we start to convert energy, we don't do it 100% efficiently. There's usually something like waste heat. So if we think of the gas we put into our car, if it's an electric vehicle, everything we put in doesn't convert directly to powering that vehicle. There's some loss, some waste heat that comes out of it. And the third law, I don't even want to get into, and no, there won't be a quiz at the end of this. This is just a means of sort of level setting, heat exchangers, what they're doing, and really how complex they can be and how they're really all around us. So like I mentioned, that they're there for a purpose to exchange heat from one fluid to another, but why? Why is that important? This could be comfort, heating or cooling, like air conditioning. It could be in the refrigeration and the cold chain, thinking about, how do we get food, from farm to table, especially if, that farm is overseas. We provide different heat exchanger solutions for ocean going boats and transportation like that, all the way to over-the-road transportation, and then also in supermarkets. And of course, we all have refrigerators in our homes. There's plenty of heat exchangers in different process cooling applications, whether you're talking about making plastic bottles that soda might go into, or more complex industrial systems. A lot of different heat exchangers embedded in those equipment. And then, of course, engine cooling. Again, Modine, depending on who you talk to, is still viewed as primarily an automotive company. I'll make the case soon that we're more of an diversified industrial company, but certainly we have sold a lot of radiators, developed a lot of radiator technology, and this is a key component for ICE engines, and now we're doing similar work for battery thermal management. I did a recent talk like this where somebody said, well, can you explain how the battery thermal management system extends the range of a vehicle? And I said, well, without it, it has no range. Just like, if you don't have a radiator in your vehicle, you have very limited range. The engine will fail, it'll seize up. So just putting a finer point on how important these heat exchangers are to the systems that they're installed in and that they operate in, they are mission critical. And that goes the same for data centers where we talk about cracks and craws, also chillers in this space. And a crack is a computer room air conditioning unit. So that one is more self-contained and has refrigerant. The craw is a computer room air handler. This is a subcomponent that usually has water glycol going through it. So again, just some examples of why heat exchangers are important. And there's all kinds of different types of heat exchangers in terms of the fluid arrangements. Could be air to air, could be a fluid to air, could be fluid to fluid. And what do I mean by fluids? Well, could be some natural fluids like water, CO2, propane. We're starting to hear more about these types of CO2 and propane as natural refrigerants. There's all kinds of synthetic fluids out there, oil, glycol, refrigerants like CFCs, HFCs, HFOs. If you're more familiar with trade names, it'd be like Freon and things like this. And we're constantly in the synthetic refrigerant space seeing some of the unintended consequences. So ozone depletion, this was heavily connected to the CFC refrigerants. A lot of good work was done to remove that ozone depletion issue with HFCs, but then came GWP or global warming potential as an unintended consequence for the HFCs. And now the latest version, the HFOs, the 1234YF, 1234ZE, these type of refrigerants, now we're seeing the unintended consequences, PFAS, PFA, an acid that happens when these refrigerants leak and they break down, and these forever chemicals that the PFAS I referred to, they get into the groundwater, into the ground, and cause potential human health concerns. So while refrigerants are important, we're seeing these unintended consequences, and the interest and the adoption of the natural refrigerants continues to grow each time we go through one of these significant events like trying to lower ozone depletion, global warming potential, or again, trying to limit our risks with PFAS concerns. And they come in a lot of different constructions, the heat exchangers, and they come together through a lot of different processes. So depending on your background, you may be very familiar with round tube plate fin heat exchangers. We'll see a lot of pictures of those coming up. Plate style heat exchangers, shell and tube, maybe microchannel heat exchangers. They tend to have similar components in terms of copper, aluminum tubes, copper, aluminum, or even stainless steel, sometimes fins, different tanks, radiators have plastic tanks. You see heavy duty construction equipment with solid aluminum tanks, different manifolds, connections, all kinds of different processes to bend, braze, weld, expand, and then of course, leak test, performance test these. So again, heat exchangers are all over the place. They surround our lives. They're a big part of getting us where we need to go, making sure we have food available at the supermarkets. The data centers are critical so that we log in and get to our banking information or share our Instagram accounts with each other. But we typically don't see the heat exchangers. They're covered up by a grill or some other cabinetry. So it's easy to take for granted and to recognize how critical they are and how they're surrounding us in our daily lives. So bringing that back now into Modine and in our segments, how we've separated the company is in two major segments: performance technologies, which houses our, let's say, legacy vehicular business, and then climate solutions, which houses our legacy HVAC business, like that radiator that was put up in AB Modine's workshop. Now we call that a unit heater, and that's the middle picture on the right-hand side under climate solutions. So by doing this segmentation, again, we've been able to drive more focus in specific markets with specific technology. So on the air-cooled components on the far left-hand side under performance technologies, these are those air-cooled heat exchangers for vehicular applications, stationary power, and industrial applications. So things like agriculture combine, could also be construction, could be trash and refuse garbage trucks. They all need these radiators charge air coolers, oil coolers, where a fluid is going through some tubes and we're rejecting that waste heat out to the air. We also have in this space genset module cooling packages. So for large stationary generators for either mission critical or backup power, we provide similar engine cooling to those type of applications. Liquid cooled applications, this is where the heat exchange is happening from, say, water to refrigerant or water to oil. So liquid to liquid heat exchange. Automotive oil coolers are a great example of this. So we have a lot of shared customers between air and liquid cooled, but we saw the technology being different enough, and even what the customers are valuing being different enough, where we broke this into two distinct business units, and both have benefited from that separation and that focus. And then we have advanced solutions. This is where we house that battery thermal management system that I talked about, also cooling packages for power electronics on electric vehicles. And we have a coatings business unit that applies factory applied coatings to heat exchangers, and also aftermarket coatings to heat exchangers, primarily to protect against corrosive attack that would cause a leak, potentially allowing some of that harmful refrigerant out to atmosphere. So that's a worst case scenario from a corrosion standpoint. But people, I think, also neglect the impact of corrosion to performance, with most of these finned extended surfaces being an aluminum type material. As that breaks down, it starts to block airflow. You start to lose some of that surface area, so the heat transfer goes down. So we really see a lot of benefits of performance over time with these protective coatings on the heat exchangers. So that's performance technologies. On the climate solutions side of the business, heat transfer products, these are the round tube plate fin heat exchangers that are very flexible, very common in residential and commercial air conditioning, also going into commercial refrigeration, whether it's, again, on the sea, over the road, or in stationary applications. Also a lot of industrial applications to put in these round tube plate fin heat exchangers. They could literally be small enough to sit on your desk, or bigger than what can fit on a flatbed truck. We've had certain applications where we really have a hard time getting containers big enough to ship from one region to another. So we have to make sure we have processing equipment in region that's large enough to make some of these big heat exchangers that might go on a industrial chiller or something like this. In HVAC and refrigeration, here we're, instead of focusing just on the heat exchanger, we're focusing more on the system, providing the complete package. Could be the unit heater that you see hanging in the greenhouse here. This same unit heater you might see if you go get your oil changed in one of the small garages like that. I have a storage space here in Racine at a local warehouse, and they have multiple unit heaters set up within the storage warehouse space. They are all Modine units. There are some competitors out there that you'll see. I won't mention their names, but this is an example of a complete unit that can be sold instead of just the heat exchanger. And we also have other examples that you'll see coming up that are focused on niche markets, like classroom air conditioning. We have a high focus and good products in this space. And then finally, we have data center, where we offer complete system solutions. I mentioned the cracks and the craws, which are really the indoor units that help manage the temperature within the data center. The downside of not doing this is the electronics start to perform very poorly and even fail if the temperatures get too high. So as these data centers are running, and the servers are operating and they're rejecting the waste heat, we need to get that out of the data center. And typically that happens with the crack or the craw, and then the chiller outside plays a big role in helping condition that space as well. So these are the segments that we've split the business into. So six specific segments that have a direct connection back to those 5 mission statements. Again, not all 5 mission statements, fit into any one vertical, but this is how we've started to use 80/20 to look at an already strong heat exchanger business where we were trying to climb that technology staircase and get into more systems. 80/20 is helping us really focus in these specific areas to grow that business. Here's a little bit more of a breakdown in terms of sales by product group. Liquid cooled applications, again, this is that liquid to liquid heat exchanger, could be water to oil, water to refrigerant. That's about 21% of our business. The advanced solutions group that has the battery thermal management and the protective coatings, that's 6% based on fiscal 23. We see that growing, really being paced largely by how fast the EV adoption and infrastructure comes into place. I do want to highlight our EV solution is really on specialty vehicle, last mile type vehicles like the bus you saw on the previous screen. It's not the light duty passenger automotive. We'll sell components from liquid cooled and air cooled into those light duty applications. But it's really in these last mile vehicles, buses, where we can provide more of a system approach. And they also have the benefit from an infrastructure standpoint of having a bit of a closed loop where they go back to a garage and they can recharge every night. So infrastructure challenges aren't as quite big of a issue for those type of applications. Say light duty vehicles, passenger vehicles in a major city, there aren't enough garages for them to go to charge overnight. So it's an important difference that I wanted to highlight in terms of where Modine is focused and how we see growth there while other areas of the EV markets may be stalled. And then finally, on the performance technology side of it, we still have almost 30% of our sales in air-cooled applications. So it's about a 50-50 split between performance technologies and climate solutions, 56-44. Again, this is where I'm going to make the case that we're really more into a diversified industrial than just an automotive company, because we've got these HVAC applications, we've got data centers that are growing really, really well for us. So, if this were fiscal 24, I think you would see things move, I'll say significantly in this pie, becoming more 50-50. And heat transfer products, again, they're providing all the heat exchangers that go into data center and into HVAC&R, not just for our company, but for other companies that require the heat exchangers. So a nice balance that's only getting better. In terms of sales by geography, about 10% in Asia, 35% in Europe, and then 55% in the Americas, primarily in North America. But we do have the one facility in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that does quite well. And then even more breaking it up by end market, again, we do have the light duty vehicle sales, primarily in the liquid cooled applications. The air cooled applications are really more off highway and agriculture. So I think I probably beat this up pretty good in terms of sales and how things are split up. I'll move to the next slide and we'll start to get a little bit more into the actual applications, and we'll start to see the heat exchangers again. So we'll zoom in to the heat exchanger technology, and again start to see some more pictures of these different heat exchangers that go into these different environments that are focused on different missions depending on that application. Sometimes fuel efficiency is the highest item on the value proposition list. In other applications, durability might be higher. thinking about large combines and some off-highway equipment, that uptime is critical, and fuel efficiency isn't quite as critical. So that's something in all areas of our business that we're constantly trying to make sure is that we understand what the end customer needs, and the devil's in the detail, and we can't treat every customer the same way. So this again is where this segmentation helps us have the right tools, the right people with the right focus in these areas, so that we understand what the challenges are, not only today, but what's coming down the road with different changes in megatrends and regulatory environments. So going a little bit deeper into these air-cooled applications, again, talked about off-highway, power generation. This market, again, is continuing to grow as we think about, our electrical grid and more vehicles converting from ICE to EV, more smart electronics around us every day. We need more and more electricity, and at the same time, we're talking about decarbonization, so power generation, clean power generation, we see this as something that'll continue to grow in a space where Modine is well positioned to be part of that solution, whether it's diesel and potentially natural gas or propane type generator solutions operating as efficiently as they can. And we also see our heat transfer technology adapting to cleaner fuels like blended hydrogen or even hydrogen fuel cell. We have technology that will help put those new solutions in place as fast as they can be adapted. And then commercial vehicle, we'll continue to need these Class 8 trucks and other vehicles to deliver products and food and other things that we need, throughout our country and throughout the rest of the world. So these modules where we can put multiple heat exchangers together, might be a radiator and a condenser, could be radiator, condenser, and oil cooler, could be a transmission oil cooler. So anytime we can start to combine the heat exchangers into a subassembly like this, we're providing more of a plug-and-play system that the customer values, and they don't need to source, one heat exchanger from company A and another one from company B, and then they put it together. So we're always looking for ways that we can bundle our heat exchangers into a subassembly that, especially on the performance technology side of the business, we'll call a module, and try to provide more value to our customers in that way. We also set up, again, our global footprint to try to be, in region with those customers, so we understand, local requirements. Also post-pandemic, try to de-risk that supply chain. That's something I know everyone is sensitive to, not only from a inflationary price impact, but also lead times. So again, our segmentation and our 80/20 philosophy has helped us in these non-technical aspects of running our business as well. Going a little bit deeper into liquid-cooled applications, again, some similar markets, but different technologies. Again, I'll just back up real quick. You see the heat exchanger construction here might be difficult with some of the resolution on the computer screens, but in the middle here we have tubes and fins. So, think of this as a typical radiator technology in your car. If you've ever looked through the grill, you see these aluminum fins and tubes. The tubes are running left to right, and the fins are sandwiched in between those tubes. And then you have manifolds or tanks of some kind that collect the fluid and route it through those tubes. Same thing with charge air coolers from a general construction standpoint. So these air-cooled applications are rejecting heat typically out to the atmosphere. On the liquid-cooled side, again, we've got two different fluid streams where we're still moving heat around, and it ultimately will make its back way to an air-cooled heat exchanger to reject it out to atmosphere. But it's much more efficient to move that heat away from the source with a liquid and then get it to, maybe another part of the vehicle where you have the benefit of having more surface area, and then you can reject that heat ultimately out to the atmosphere. So these are different sort of, I would call intermediate heat exchangers that can be put into the systems to manage those heat loads and ultimately hit the vehicular performance goals they're looking for. In commercial vehicle and automotive, most of the time that is fuel efficient driven, and off highway there's emission levels that are exhaust gas recirculation coolers. This technology helps a lot with meeting the different emission tiers that have been rolled out from a regulatory standpoint. So again, you see a lot of aluminum, a lot of stainless, a lot of engineered plastics. Again, really needing to understand the durability requirements, the life requirements in these different end markets. So we leverage, of course, our strong experience. We also work, like I mentioned at the beginning, this virtual technology team that I have. We do a lot of our initial DV testing virtually now to make sure we have a high level of confidence that the materials will survive the loads in the customer specification. And then we will do physical testing like a PV style test, production validation test, to make sure that the virtual models are as good as we think they are. And typically that's how it works out. Of course, if there is an issue, whether virtually or in the physical testing, we can quickly address that and design a solution to meet whatever that failure mode might be. And at the end, if we want to talk about common failure modes or impacts on manufacturing processes of these different heat exchangers, I'm happy to do that. Advanced solutions, this is the deep dive into the last part of performance technologies, where again, we're looking in these niche markets, bus, truck, specialty vehicle, last mile delivery, where we can provide technical support, not just heat exchangers, but systems that can go into these electric vehicles and even some fuel cell packages, where there are startup companies that really enjoy being able to work with a company like Modine that can come in and give them a complete solution for, say, battery thermal management. That's one less thing that they have to worry about from a supply chain standpoint, from an engineering standpoint. We can solve a bigger part of their overall problem. And in many applications, not only do they need battery thermal management, but they need to be able to manage the thermal needs of the other electronics on the vehicle. And we have other packages for those applications as well. So here we're providing pumps, compressors, heat exchangers, software, firmware, the controls to interface with their system, a true plug and play subsystem. Again, the light duty passenger vehicle, they tend to have the engineering teams and don't require this assistance. So, we're filling a critical need in these more specialty vehicle environments. And then again, the coating side of the business, there's the factory applied, where we'll coat heat exchangers, large and small, whether we make them or somebody else does. They send them to our e-coating facilities, and we'll provide the epoxy e-coat over these very complex heat exchangers. A lot of surface area, and it's critical that we get a very thin film over the heat exchanger surface so we don't impact the performance. And we've got to make sure it goes all the way through the depth of the heat exchanger, otherwise corrosion will find that weak point and ultimately fail if we've missed any area with the coating. So a lot of time, effort, trade secret type activity has gone into the coatings group. And for those applications where maybe the equipment was already assembled and sent out to a coastal environment, and they didn't have time or visibility to say, oh, these heat exchangers should have been e-coated. We have an aftermarket coating offering that includes cleaners, so you can clean the coils in the field. You can get any salt that may have already built up after some initial use in these coastal environments. And then you can provide aftermarket coatings onto the heat exchangers and also onto the cabinetry. So again, this is about extending the life of the heat exchanger and also extending the performance through proper maintenance. So that's Performance Technologies. Climate Solutions, here more stationary applications, covered wheels and treads and Performance Technologies along with coatings. Here in Climate Solutions, we're thinking about stationary applications and how can we engineer a cleaner, healthier world in these type of markets. So the first one, heat transfer products, again, a big portion of our business, around 25% of our sales. And that's because these heat exchangers can really go into any vapor compression cycle. So whether it's commercial or residential HVAC, refrigeration could be on-road, off-road, certainly data centers and heat pumps. This is a big growing opportunity for Modine. Right now, we see it exploding in Europe as they were looking to move away from gas-fired boiler technology for comfort heating. The conflict in Ukraine accelerated that, so heat pumps have really been taking off in Europe, and we're seeing similar trends with less pressure in North America as we look to move away from fossil fuels. Electric heat pumps are a good solution, a good answer, but then it also begs the question, where does that additional electricity come from? An area where Modine, we feel like we can provide multiple solutions to a difficult problem. In the HVAC and refrigeration space, this is where we've seen this example around the heating, the unit heaters, and again that goes right back to our founder A.B. Modine and things that he did from an innovation standpoint in his own shop. This has evolved into more of a gas-fired unit heater. We've got a sub group of these unit heaters specific for residential garage heaters called hot dogs. So I hope somebody's heard of that and maybe has one in their garage. On the Echo side of our brands, this is something that came through the Levada acquisition that Modine executed about 9 years ago now. Time really flies, but these unit coolers came in, and these are in cold rooms, and they're typically coupled with the air-cooled condenser that's right next to it. So being able to keep fruits and vegetables, meat, things like that cold, you have to have the indoor unit, and then you have to have the outdoor unit to reject the heat. Indoor air quality, we've got schoolroom ventilators. These are complete systems, typically air conditioning and heat pump systems. They can be more vertical, the taller, more slender version on the left-hand side, or they can be under the unit, so under the window. They can be short and wide, but they have heat exchangers in here. They have a blower, an air mover of some kind. So these are very important products, and we saw an explosion in this area during COVID, where everyone wanted to upgrade their equipment, have better indoor air quality. So that also encompasses filters, sound requirements. We want to keep the noise down in the classroom. So again, just different ways. The heat exchangers are mission critical, but they tie into the rest of the unit, the air movers, the compressors, the pumps, and we've naturally been able to climb that technology staircase in this area. And then finally, on the refrigeration side of HVAC&R, we have larger dry cooler type units and larger condensers that can go into more of these process cooling applications. So a lot of nice little niche areas that we've found. Certainly there's larger OEMs in some of the more mainstream spaces that doesn't really make sense for Modine to take on. but some important niche areas that we've developed more than just heat exchanger solutions to meet market needs. And then data centers. Again, if you go to that modine.com investor section, our latest earnings call, probably the last 3 or 4, have really focused on what we're seeing in terms of data center growth. And a lot of these words, like data center engineering, they're big words. They cover a lot of different areas. So in this example with data centers, there's the co-location, which are considered smaller data centers, at least compared to the hyperscale data centers. And then you've got the telecom, which are more distributed, but certainly an important and growing part of data center type technology. And here we can have very large equipment like air-cooled and liquid-cooled chillers, can be very modular. These can easily be 10 feet tall by 10 feet wide, and over probably 40, 50, 60 feet. Is very modular. They can build out. It's more of a question usually of transportation versus how big can we really make them, because not only do you have to get them to the site, they typically have to be picked up by crane or airlifted, depending on the building size and where they need to go. And again, this is another area where this virtual technology team that reports to me, we look at not just the application loading, but that transportation loading, and how we get the equipment to site, how we pick it up and place it, because the last thing you want to do is you have a customer that spent a lot of money, bought multiple chillers to go on a rooftop, and you find out that your lifting points are insufficient and you get some sort of deflection or product damage as they're just about placed on site. That'd be a disaster. So we take great care not only through the manufacturing process from a quality perspective, but also the transportation and the final setting of those products. Fan walls are another type of indoor heat exchanger subassembly. In this case, we have the heat exchangers, the air mover, filters, controls. So again, we're trying to, as efficiently as we can, get the heat out of the data center room and back outside, likely to one of those air-cooled chillers. And then the computer room air conditioners, this is where we actually have a refrigerant loop inside that's then taking the heat outside through the line work and connecting to a condenser outside. So different ways to solve data center thermal management needs. And of course, redundancy is critical in these applications. And looking at those building controls, looking at the efficiency of the equipment, the uptime of the equipment, water usage. So we see some really advanced control systems in the data center space, and also the opportunity to go and do preventative maintenance, and develop new smart solutions in this space. So a lot of things happening in data center, and again, based on even meetings like this that we're having today that require data center support, we only expect these trends to continue to grow. So this is basically my summary slide, and this is a slide that the executive leadership team put together back in fiscal 22. So what I talked to you about primarily today was fiscal 23 in terms of product mix and results, and now we're into fiscal 24 for the company. So again, the pies are changing, the products are continuing to evolve, different projects are being won, and it's all part of this transformation that Modine's going through. So it started with the new leadership team, our focus on 80-20 to really, again, look at through data. It's very data driven, what customers, what products are really core to our business. And it doesn't mean, if it's that top 20 or the top 15% that are driving, 75, 80, 90% of the value. It doesn't mean we say that those other customers aren't important. All customers are important. It's just we have a different strategy, different rules. It could be price, it could be lead time, could be a number of things, but it really drives strategy, and you can do that when you have a clearer understanding of that market, of that business, and that's where being in the smaller businesses really helps, and it builds that high performance culture and organization that's needed to be successful, and we do it through simplification. That's been the beauty of it. It hasn't been we add and add and add. We actually look at where the waste is and how we can eliminate that. Certainly not violate any contracts, not disrupt our customers, but be more proactive and get them away from older legacy technology into newer technology, because we've all seen the challenges with supply chain and other things that has made managing the managing the tail of old technology very difficult. So we're in the kind of perform and deliver portion of this now that we've built the foundation to really build the business going forward. So we're seeing this financial performance. We're on track. Again, I don't want to come across like the CFO. I do a terrible job. We got a great CFO that covers this type of information much better if you want to listen to any of our earnings calls. But we're basically on track with that fiscal 24 outlook, and we want to not just stop there, but continue to accelerate. Look how we can climb that technology staircase and offer more value-add solutions, in the right regional markets with the right customers. So it's a really exciting time. I've enjoyed my almost 20 years here at Modine, in the last 3 with the new leadership team and how we're transforming this company. It's almost, if you like sports, like having kind of a new coach with a new philosophy come in and re-energize the entire global organization. And what doesn't mean that the last coach was a bad coach. It just kind of run its course. And now we've got a new playbook, and we're in the middle of executing the playbook. And so far, things are going really well. So with that, that's the end of my prepared content. Certainly want to thank you for this opportunity and the time you've given me this evening. And if there's any questions, if you'd like me to back up, look at any of the previous slides, please feel free to ask away.
Hey, Mark, this is Hector Lugo. I have a question. Did you have any business with Tesla at all? With Cybertruck or whatever they have now?
Yeah, I don't think I can comment on specific customers. I know I mentioned a few names throughout. I can say that we've definitely had business in that area. So feel free to ask the next part of that question.
Okay. Another question is, are you, Modine, thinking in going air mobility business?
So I heard air mobility. Are you talking about like drone transportation?
No,
unmanned vehicle?
Actually, it's a little plane, like a taxi.
Yeah.
That go up vertically and go vertical, not landing. It's electric VTOL.
Yep. No, I'm familiar with this. Yeah, they're really cool. If people haven't seen these things yet, it's the ones I've seen on unmanned air taxi. And again, we were talking a little bit about where Modine's at relative to Chicago and Chicago traffic. And it's like, imagine if you could go from O'Hare, which is outside of downtown Chicago, and can sometimes take 45 minutes to go 10 miles. If you could air taxi. Yeah, if you could air taxi, you could do it in 10 minutes or less. It probably takes you longer to load and unload than it does to travel. So yeah, we're looking again at those niche applications, how we can best provide solutions. Certainly, even from a coating side of the business, we see opportunities potentially there. We see other heat exchanger opportunities there. So that is something that is definitely being discussed. Still really early. That's the other thing, from a technology standpoint, that I like what we're doing with that advanced systems group and our legacy liquid and air. If you think of that on a broad picture, We have heat exchangers for internal combustion engine. That's legacy. We understand that very well. And then we also have this growing systems group for EV vehicles. So in terms of that adoption question that I talked about, we can balance that, right? We can say, oh, if things start to slow down, that's okay. We can plan and shift our resources a little bit because we're covered on both ends. So yeah, in terms of unmanned vehicle, whether it's wheels or props and jet engines, that is something we're watching very closely. But again, I think it's a rate of adoption. How many of these air taxis are really going to be there? Does this make sense for Modine or not? Again, this is where the beauty of these individual business units is. I can bring these types of opportunities in, and they have filters and ways to evaluate. Does that make sense for them to go after now, or maybe monitor and come back to later?
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Mark, I had a question about your development process. You were saying that you're going through like your DV virtually. So I guess that's like the digital twin approach. And then, obviously you have to do a physical sample, because you don't know what assumptions might not be okay. How are you, I'm assuming that you're also doing some kinds of things to accelerate that process. I don't know if it's additive manufacturing or some expedited prototyping, but how much time have you been able to reduce your development process, say, from 5 years ago to what you think you can do today? We're say, from the time we kick it off, the time we say, yeah, we are validated for production, have you been able to compress that much?
Yeah. And again, this is where it varies by those different business units. So I'll go to HTP. Dan and I work together in HTP. These are those round two-plate fin heat exchangers that could go into refrigeration or air conditioning. Those customers are very comfortable using custom selection software to say, okay, my space to fill is this, and I need this many BTUs at this airside pressure drop for these flows. They're very comfortable. They might go right to basically a production validation sample and be happy with it, or be close enough where they say, okay, I just need to adjust the fin density. I go from 18 fins per inch to 17 fins per inch. So they've always in those markets been comfortable using the virtual analysis in that way and moving fast, still getting that prototype. Where from a compression standpoint, I think it's more interesting is in the vehicular markets, where you would do an initial prototype, and there would be some testing, maybe component testing, maybe system testing, and then you would do a DV1 build, and then maybe a DV2 build, and then a PV1 build, and then a PV2 build, and that's where not only Modine's maturity, but maturity with those customers, where we said, hey, this is kind of crazy. The samples are expensive, the testing's expensive, and now that we've answered a lot of the questions through not only the lab testing, but the on-road testing, we've gathered more data with accelerometers and things like that, where we shifted, from more on-road stuff to more tech center stuff. So I mentioned the vehicular wind tunnel. We also have multi-axis shake tables for vibration. We've got pressure cycle. So yeah, we've going back 10 years, a lot of physical testing. 5 years, more tech center testing. Now again, a lot of those DV1, DV2 builds, there's been enough correlation of the models, and the heat exchanger geometries really haven't changed all that much. There's been maybe material substitution, thinning of walls and things like that, but they've been incremental changes, and the correlation to the virtual models is still really strong.
Okay.
So talking a lot, but even in that area, that's where you've compressed maybe by something like 50%.
Oh, okay, quite a bit.
Yeah, but the new areas, just real quick, like in the advanced solutions area, that's where the curve starts over again, right? Is you virtually get close, but even the customer still hasn't finished developing their system. So you need to give them that early prototype, or even in those areas where it's more niche. They'll say, hey, you got something close to this, maybe you made for somebody else. Can you give me something off the shelf? And then we'll say, yeah, we could give you this. And then as soon as you say that, they say, but I need to change this, and I need you to move this connection, and then it's no longer off the shelf. So again, it depends a lot on the different business unit, but it's something that I think we can apply as a process, and mature in an appropriate way with the customer based on what we've seen in other areas.
Okay, sure.
One more question for me, Mark. Are you certified ISO?
Yeah, again, the certifications will vary by business unit and by plant, but short answer is yes. If you ask a lot of tough questions, I'm going to start to point at Dan.
Okay.
I would even jump in and take this one for you, Mark, that we have either IATF certification or ISO certification, depending on, as Mark said, which business vertical in that it is. A lot of them, for example, on the you saw like the data centers and that, they just require ISO, whereas the automotive requires more IATF. So we have a combination of both.
My question then is, you are doing design. So are you working with DFMA? You
Yes.
provide DFM to manufacturing?
Yeah, we will allow for on-site viewing. Again, DFEMA, PFEMA control plans, that it's like the skeleton, right? They're all connected. So, we view those documents, those control documents as confidential, but yeah, the different areas of the business have DFEMAs, specific to their products and their end markets.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, can I do a question?
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, Mark, thank you for sharing this interesting topic, and you did an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my only question is in reference to benchmarking. Do you know if Modine is conducting formal benchmarking in order to see what the competition is doing in order to increase the market share?
Yes, yeah, good question. Again, benchmarking, and one of those big words again, like engineering, because you can do physical benchmarking on product, you can do benchmarking of software, of marketing strategy. So again, this was one of the things when we were a functional organization, we had a really good benchmarking standard procedure for automotive heat exchangers. So we knew if we could go out and procure one, but before you cut it up, you'd performance test it. And then you do pressure cycle, and then after pressure cycle, you would do burst, because you could get the most information out of that, and then you cut it up after you've already broke it, right? So then you can look at wall thicknesses and confirm geometries and things like this. And we thought, wow, what a great practice! Every part of our business should do it like this. And we went to the data center team, and they said, "You're crazy. We can't get that equipment, and if we could, our labs are backed up to performance test." So again, this is where that segmentation really helped, where from a high level, what you want to get out and what's important to the business is usually similar. You want to understand the competitive advantage that product has or that software has, but then how you execute it, that's where we started to give the businesses more freedom to have work instructions to say, hey, this is how I get there, and this is what makes sense for my area of the business. And we stopped trying to force those lower level details. So again, short answer is yes, but how we think about it, how we get there in the different areas of the business is very different.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think There are no more questions. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed the opportunity to be here, and I'm honestly excited about Modine and proud to be a part of Modine. I love my job. My favorite part is working with people like Dan. We have a lot of great people at Modine, and glad that I could help tell part of our story this evening. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you
good
very much.
presentation, Mark. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.